Hey, my name is Natalie, and I am a nurse on a postpartum mother-baby newborn nursery unit at Forsyth Hospital in Winston-Salem. We are a high-risk um, women's center hospital, so many women from all the surrounding counties outside of Winston-Salem actually come to us to deliver if you are have any sort of high risk um, when you're pregnant. So we deliver about 7,000 babies a year, which equals at least probably 20 a day. So we are a very busy hospital and a very busy women's center. And I'm going to share a little bit about um, how we function there and um, as a manager, some things that I would do on a type of unit that I work on. Um, so the first question in this blog is, what skills described in Chapter 7 and on the leadership questionnaire would you use to secure needed resources for your staff? Um, so there are several skills I think that are really important um, as a manager to be able to obtain to be in that type of role. Some of the ones in my reading that first came to mind were problem solving. And I say that because I've worked on a unit with a manager who did not have any sort of problem solving skills at all, and it was really difficult. And being where I am now, there is a huge difference. So, the first place I worked, our manager, if I had an issue with something and I went to her, she would she was super sweet and she would be really understanding and say, you're right, like we need to do something about this, I understand, and then nothing would get done. And then someone else would go to her and kind of the same thing, and months later, everything was still a mess and nothing would get done to solve the problem. Um, and so we ended up, a couple people went higher than her with like a bigger issue um, to the director, and something got done after that. And so, although at first it seemed encouraging that she was supportive and nice and understanding, I started to realize that she just did not know what to do. She didn't know how to um, confront anyone or resolve conflict. And that is something that is a skill that a manager definitely needs to be able to have. Um, and whereas where I work now, my manager is amazing at problem solving. If you go to her with something that you're concerned about, you can bet that even if she's like, okay, let me think about it, the next day she'll come back to you with some ideas and she'll help and she'll get input from other people, and things are just resolved very quickly. Um, and with that is communication. Communication is ginormous. So with problem solving, I think communication goes hand in hand. If you don't know how to talk to your staff, um, talk to those around you, talk to those above you and under you as a manager, um, then you're going to get nowhere, especially when trying to solve a problem. So communication skills are huge. Knowing how to confront people, knowing how to explain situations, knowing how to talk to your staff. If a manager is not able to communicate and talk to her staff in an effective way, then she's not going to be an effective manager and they're not going to respect her. Um, let's see, planning. Planning is huge. On our floor, we have a very high patient turnover rate. Our patients are there for 2 days if they are a vaginal delivery and 3 days if typically if they are a C-section. And with doing, at least 20 deliveries a day and discharging, 20 patients a day, um, that is huge. So we have to always be planning for beds, for C-sections, for inductions, for downsizing staff, for calling in staff. What are we going to do if we fill up? We've had nights where we were trying to plan and realized that we were going to run out of beds, so we should have planned earlier, and so that we didn't have to hold patients upstairs in the delivery room. And so planning is huge. If we do not plan for our days very early on, then we can end up in a mess at the end of the day when we run out of rooms, or um, when we don't have adequate staffing, or we need to downsize. So that's definitely, I guess, a skill that anyone in any type of leadership needs to have, and definitely a manager needs to be able to sit down and have a plan for the day and a plan for her staff and a plan for her unit. As far as staffing goes, I also said staffing is really big. I think that in a manager's role, she needs to be able to be available for her staff and provide resources for her staff. The manager I used previously worked for, her office was way at the end of a hallway, around a corner, behind a closed door. Um, the manager I work for now, she could have chosen she's newer, and she could have chosen an office that was bigger and more luxurious, that was down a hallway, that was a little bit further from our unit, and she chose to be in the old um, photo room, which is like this tiny closet room, but it's right at the nurse's station, and her door is always open. And she did it because she wants to be readily available for her staff, for any concerns. She wants to know what's going on in her unit, be involved in the staffing, um, and always have resources to help when we have questions. If we have a question and we need anything fast, she's right there. We don't have to go run search for her down the hall and around the corner. Um, so that's huge, being available and providing resources for your staff, having an open door policy, which she has, um, and some other things involving like actual staffing numbers that I think is kind of cool that we do on our unit. So everywhere pretty much we know that nurses are short, and that the nurse turnover rate tends to be sort of high. And a couple things that my current manager does is she does stay interviews. So every 6 months, she randomly draws names of a handful of people, and she interviews them and asks questions about how things are going, where they're at, are they enjoying their job, what we can do to keep them, how we can make things better. So rather than just a hiring interview and an exit interview, they do stay interviews, which is really great, and it's really helpful for people who are struggling with being burnout. And we do, we have a lot of incentive things at our job. And what something that, like at my previous job, we'd have incentives. We had like little parties if we met, patient satisfaction scores and stuff like that. But usually that was like at the end of several months. Something I think is really neat that we do now, whenever we admit a patient, we in their admission packet we give them little thank you cards, and we just kind of tell them, hey, at the end of your stay, if there's any staff that you really want to recognize, fill out this thank you card, write a little letter to them or a note to them, and we can give it back to them. Since we can't give out like personal information, a lot of times on our type of floor with a newborn floor, moms, would like to call a nurse later, but we can't do that. So we give them cards they can write. Um, so when these mothers write these cards, or fathers, they give them back to our managers before they leave, and the managers make copies of them, and they attach little prizes to them. And a lot of times it's just like free coffee or Starbucks or a meal downstairs or just little things. And it's so nice. And what I realized is that I don't really even care so much about the food or the like coffee cards, but about the letters. They are so incredibly sweet and encouraging, and that's what's kept me at my job and wanted me to just work harder and be more motivated to be a better nurse. When I read that card from a mom saying you went above and beyond, providing care for my newborn or for me, it just makes my day. And so she does that kind of stuff, which I had never had before. And we also do, with staffing, we do peer interviews. And so whenever our manager is hiring a new nurse, she might let one or two people in on the interview, um, like in nursing staffing, and to have a say in kind of do we think that they would be a good fit for us? What's your opinion? And that's just a way of including us in the staffing process, which is also, I think, is pretty neat. Um, so those are the big things that came to mind. As far as the questionnaire, I scored pretty equally on all of them, which I didn't really know how I would do, but let me pull it up here. So I scored like 20 on interpersonal, which is moderate, a 19 on conceptual, and a 20 on administrative skills, which is moderate. So pretty much moderate on all of them. And I knew interpersonal that I would do well on. I feel like I'm a really decent communicator. I'm good with talking with people. I don't like conflict, but I'm decent at resolving it. And so I just kind of saw myself as having a high interpersonal skills. I was not sure about administrative. So that's the one thing that I'm not necessarily surprised, I just didn't know where I would score on, and I guess I'm a little bit surprised I scored pretty much the same on administrative and interpersonal skills, which is helpful to know how I would kind of respond. Um, and then how would you use published literature in the process? Um, I think with like if a staff member comes to a manager with a question, or if a manager says, "Hey, we're going to do something new on our unit," things are always changing. So when they come to us and say, "Hey, we're doing something different or something new, or we're implementing a new process," a lot of times us as staffing, we're like, "Oh my gosh, there's so many new things. Why are we like why?" And I think it's helpful for managers to have reasons and literature to back it up. So if a manager can present us with a study and say, here's why, here's what, Presby, which is another hospital we're affiliated with, here's what they did and here were their results. Or, this study shows this literature shows this. And then we are more motivated to participate and be on board with our manager. If we don't have literature to back up why we're doing something, we're more likely to question why we're implementing a new process or a new change. So um, I think that is really important. I have a little, I guess it's kind of like a little example of this. We're actually, for our babies, we are getting new diapers. We use Pampers, and now we're going to start using Huggies. Well, the last time that our unit used Huggies, all of our babies broke out in diaper rashes very badly. So our director actually gave the manager her credit card and told her, go to the store, buy as many Pampers as you want, they're on me, which is really awesome. Well, now Huggies came back and said, we want you to use our diapers again. We have new research to prove that we have no longer have issues with diaper rash and we have bettered them. Well, at first all of the nurses questioned it. We're like, why would we do that? And then when we saw the research from other hospitals and what they've done and how the process has changed with their making of diapers and how other hospitals are having great outcomes now and not having diaper rashes, we're more on board when we see the literature behind the process and not just not just are being told we're switching diapers. So that's kind of like a little example of how literature was really helpful for us. Let's see, was there something else? Oh, how would you feel preference vertical or horizontal structure? I've only worked in a vertical structure, so I'm not totally sure. It seems from what I've read that with horizontal, there's less control, there's more dependence on other people to play their part and to pick up slack. With the things I've read, I seem to like vertical more, and since that's all I know, I like it. I feel like we have a layout of how things work and who to go to. We have a lot of structure. Everyone knows the chain of command. It's not a question. We know who to go to for problems, and then who to go to above our manager, which is our director, the vice president, or the CNO, the CEO. So I just feel like there's more layout and structure with vertical. Um, so I tend to lean towards that. Again, I haven't worked in a horizontal structure of care, so I'm not totally positive, but it seems like there would be a lot of like gray area and responsibility on single people. So I feel like I would still stick towards vertical. I'm going to attach my article below that I read on a trans disciplinary model of care that I thought was pretty cool. But I think I covered all the questions, and thank you.